So, question from me, Milan. What's the thing that you see most often that trips up the teams that you work with around coaching reviews?
The experience of, I know it's a dirty word, but performance reviews from the past, especially in established organizations, is a chore for everybody. It needs to happen. The outcome of it is for the member, like, okay, what kind of raise am I getting this year, right? It's just everything's wrong about it. It's absolutely ridiculous. By the way, we should be talking about compensation as a maybe it will be a separate card, but maybe we'll mention it later today. But that is the biggest part. It's like people are used to, when they hear the word review, it's a performance review and it's criticism, it's top down, it's, what is it that you're doing? Or either, hey, you're great, awesome, here is your 2% or whatever, or, it's something to be dreaded. And now, because it's dreaded, it doesn't happen more often than, once a year. So it's completely meaningless. And as you're saying, a huge expenditure of energy. So switching people into the thinking that no, it's a dedicated time for a three-way conversation, right? The leader, the person who is accountable for the function or who holds the scorecard, and the scorecard itself. Because the scorecard is a subject of the review as well, because we need to look at, does it still fit? Did we put the right accountabilities there? Because the fact that some accountability is not working might be that it's on the wrong scorecard, right? So it's an open conversation on what is it that we can do better the next quarter.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
makes it a coaching review, because we are collaborating of improving everybody's outcome and experience as we go, and we do it every quarter because here is just way too long. Another day, another afternoon in Vancouver, another morning in Sydney, right? And
Indeed.
that means another episode of Cardcast. So if you've been here before, you know what's coming. If not, subscribe so you know next time. And we're going to shuffle some cards and see what is it we want to talk about today.
Reviews, ratings, and feedback. Oh, I love this card. This is actually very topical for me. So I'll tell you a story about what's come up with me and my coaching business with one of my clients quite recently. But what do we mean by reviews, rating, and feedback? So this card is all about the coaching reviews that we use to assess the performance of a function, not the individual. And let's get the elephant out of the room straight away. We don't like the term performance reviews, and no one else does either. They normally serve
Especially
no
people who are
purpose.
performance reviewed.
Indeed,
So,
they serve no purpose. They burn a huge amount of organizational energy and time, and they effectively fulfill or create nothing of any lasting value. So let's get that out of the way straight away. These are not performance reviews. These are coaching reviews that are designed to coach the individual to better performance, to improve themselves, to achieve the outcomes that the organization and the leader and the individual wants to achieve from the function. So, not performance reviews, they're coaching reviews. Now, in Metronome software, the software that we use with our clients, this has been set up to follow on straight from scorecards. So if you've got a scorecard, you can very easily create a function review, a coaching review. And it
if you
literally
don't
is
have
one
a
or two clicks.
scorecard, and if you
Well,
don't have a scorecard, you better start with scorecards. But that's another card, that's another episode.
yeah, and if you, as Milan says, if you don't have a scorecard, there is another edition of this cardcast that goes in deep onto how to put a scorecard together. So, question from me, Milan: what's the thing that you see most often that trips up the teams that you work with around coaching reviews?
Uh, the experience of, I know it's a dirty word, but performance reviews from the past, especially in established organizations, is a chore for everybody. It needs to happen. really the outcome of it is for the member, like, okay, what kind of raise am I getting this year, right? It's just everything's wrong about it. It's absolutely ridiculous. By the way, we should be talking about compensation as a maybe it will be a separate card, but maybe we'll mention it later today. But that is the biggest part. It's like people are used to, when they hear the word review, it's a performance review and it's criticism, it's top down, it's, what is it that you're doing? Or either, hey, you're great, awesome, here is your 2% or whatever, or, it's something to be dreaded. And now, because it's dreaded, it doesn't happen more often than, once a year. So it's completely meaningless. And as you're saying, a huge, huge expenditure of energy. So switching people into the thinking that no, it's a dedicated time for a three-way conversation, right? The leader, the person who is accountable for the function or who holds the scorecard, and the scorecard itself. Because the scorecard is a subject of the review as well, because we need to look at, does it still fit? Did we put the right accountabilities there? Because the fact that some accountability is not working might be that it's on the wrong scorecard, right? So it's a open conversation on what is it that we can do better the next quarter.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
makes it a coaching review, because we are collaborating of improving everybody's outcome and experience as we go, and we do it every quarter because here is just way too long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's this conceptual barrier that most people have in their heads, particularly if they've worked in large organizations, that this is a performance review. Now, I'll say again, it is not a performance review. It is a coaching review. Now, the story I alluded to earlier on is an experience I had with one of my clients recently, and we'd got the scorecards in place. The whole leadership team had their scorecards, and they were starting to cascade them down to the next level. So the next step, as we moved into the next quarterly, was okay. Let's start going through the coaching review process, and they were blocked. They couldn't get there. So in the end, I recorded a video and I circulated that, and that still wasn't cutting through. So at the quarterly meeting, what I decided to do was actually do a live coaching review in front of the whole of the leadership team. So I sort of asked someone to volunteer, and they were very forthcoming, and they were more than willing to do it. And I said to them, okay, before the session, let go through the coaching review and rate yourself, make it a bit of fun, maybe put some super green in there, maybe put some red in there, and I'll go through separately and assess you as well. And we'll just go through as if it was a normal coaching review in front of everyone else. But let's make it fun. Let's make it a learning experience. So that's exactly what we did in the session. We had a lot of fun. We had some laughs. I put some things down as super green, and he put them down as red. And but the point here was that we wanted to make it a conversation around the differences, in the scorecard assessment for each individual area. So if I put someone down as super green and they put themselves down as red, well, okay, well, why are you being so hard on yourself? You knocked it out the park this quarter. But the point is, there is a difference of opinion. There is a difference of expectation. So there's a lack of clarity about what someone thinks they should have done and what they actually did. And that can go both ways either. So having the conversation around, well, I think I didn't perform and you think I did perform. So reconciling that expectation live in the moment in the coaching review. That is what a coaching review is all about. So we had a lot of fun, and it was very instructive. And people walked into that session hating performance reviews, and they came out understanding what coaching reviews were and how it could work to their advantage and how they could cascade it down to their teams positively to their advantage also. So that's a practice that I'm going to adopt with all of my clients from here on in.
I think that the important piece is that no, this is not a different version of performance reviews. You do this, so you don't have to do performance reviews, right? We
Yeah,
dispense with that concept that's wrong, and it's just shut and let's forget about it.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
again, it's super super unhelpful. Um,
yeah.
the other piece is, as you were talking, I think that this is not just about reviews. This is, I think, about metronomics as a whole. Like I would say that 90% of metronomics is the removal of the element of surprise from our daily life, right?
Mm,
And this
mm,
is it, right? Like, because you don't want to go for a year to realize that, to go back to your example, the assumption of how good looks like, sorry, uh, differs. And they differed for a year, and the person was stressed because they were thinking that they're not doing a very good job, and their leader was like, oh, everything's great, I don't need to interact. So, and they, people feel like they're not being supported, or it could go the other way around, right? Like, that's the worst scenario, when the team member believes that they're doing a bang up job, and the leader is not there with them on it. And then, if you would, hey, you're actually been doing something else than I expected you to do. Like, it's ridiculous, right? The one thing that it's not in the card, or maybe it is actually, is the close interconnectedness of the review with coaching one-on-ones,
Yes.
right? We do
What's
one-on-one
what's the
every.
distinction there? I mean, it's probably worth just clarifying the difference between those two things.
Yeah, what do you think?
So for me, coaching reviews are things you should do quarterly. Some of my clients do them monthly. I'll leave it to them. Some of them do it every 6 weeks, which I think is a good compromise.
That's
But the
not a
important
that's
thing is it's not
wow.
every year. It is every quarter, sometimes more often. Whereas a one-on-one coaching conversation or chat is how they're going in the moment. So feedback is like fish. It starts to stink after 2 days. So if you're not giving regular one-on-one feedback, positive and performance improvement, and I mean that as a positive term, not a negative term. You did this, you would have achieved a better outcome had you thought about this, and how do you think you could have done better on this sort of thing? So those things happen in the moment. And it might be, a weekly scheduled review, or it might be actually in the moment when the opportunity arises. And I actually think it should be both. So some of my clients do sort of the one-on-one chats, every week or every fortnight, but it's supplemented by that in the moment feedback. Because as I mentioned, feedback is like fish. It stinks after 2 days. You got to tell people in the moment.
The weekly one-on-one is really, how are we progressing? What help do you need, right? In my way of explaining it to my client is that the weekly one-on-one is the time you as a leader commit to make yourself available to your A players for whatever it is they need. So they set up the agenda, they set up what they need to talk about. Again, it's a great time to provide some timely feedback. It's a great time to, open a new discussions or whatever you need to bring to that person as a leader. But the primary goal is, I, as a team member, I know that I have guaranteed access to my leader on an ongoing basis. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's, as you say, every fortnight. But I definitely prefer weekly, because even if it's short, even if it's in the calendar, it's there. That also preserves, or protects that leader's calendar, because you'll be talking to them in 2 days, so maybe you don't need to send that email, you don't need to send that Slack message, you just put it into a discussion item for your one-on-one that is coming up anyway, right? That helps everybody. So I often see the um, weekly one-on-ones as the major productivity boost for the whole organization. And then all you
Yeah.
have to say is that every 13th or every sixth one is the coaching review, where we are bringing the scorecard into the conversation. On the weekly
Yeah.
basis, we don't necessarily talk about the scorecard. We might be talking about the priorities, the things that are important within the context of the
Yes.
quarter. But when we are talking about reviews, we go a step further, right? We're literally looking at, okay, how does this sit structurally, right? Do we have the right accountabilities? Are we trending well towards our, longer term goals?
Yep.
The,
Yep.
I'll add one more thing, and it is that, the scorecard, sorry, the card's title is reviews, rating, and feedback. Use the word feedback a couple of times. Uh, Leaders often hate to give feedback, especially the negative one, because it's hard and it's emotionally loaded, but it's a skill. And this framework for coaching reviews that Metronomics has, that we are coaching, is actually practicing that muscle in a very, very safe way, because all you're doing is say, hey, here is the expectation. Is it green? Is it red? Right? Or you can use a numbering scale. It doesn't really matter. I like the colors because it's pretty damn obvious. You don't have to decode whether the number is off by one or off by three. It's either it's different, so we need to talk about it, or we're aligned and we can talk about the solution together.
And maybe this is a good time to actually go through that scale, because I really love the way you categorize that scale. And I know you say it's not you, it's someone else that came up with it, but to talk us through that scale.
Well, I think I did steal it from Kim Scott's Radical Candor. So here is the credit given. But we have four colors in metronome. But if you choose the colors as the method, by the way, I have a story about that. And that is a we have red, yellow, green, and dark green, or what we like to call super green. We have to agree of what it is. People hate to put a yellow in, right? Again, it's like it's conflict avoidance. But no, just think about it in the way which is described. So green is good. It's okay. It's awesome, right? We don't necessarily need to talk about it. Like if we agree on it, it's just fine. Super green is beyond expectations. Like holy smokes, we probably need to recognize that, and we need to talk about it from that perspective. Yellow is good for now, meaning it's all right, but we probably need to talk about it to make sure it stays good, right? There is
I
something to
like that.
talk about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Good,
again,
good
that's
for
it.
now. Mhm.
It's good for now. It's okay, right? Red is, hey, we need to talk about this. Something is not working, right? And again, it's an invitation to a conversation. It's not a criticism. And going back to the removal of the element of surprise, the team members shouldn't be surprised to see red. They probably know it's coming. And after a couple of cycles with your A players, the differences in the color coding are going to be few and far between.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
becomes a collaboration of how can we improve this. We're working together. Like early on, it can come because we are aligning the expectations, we're aligning the definitions. But once you get there, it's a 15-minute conversation that we do once a quarter or
Absolutely.
once every 6 weeks. I love that, by the way. That we are just saying, hey, let's just have this checkpoint to make sure we are on the right track from the bigger perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll bring the ICP into the conversation, which is right, individual plan.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that if it's red, they probably know it's coming. How do they know? Because they've had the coaching in the moment, either in their one-on-one reviews weekly or fortnightly, or actually in the moment as it happens. It shouldn't be a surprise. If someone turns up to a review and they're getting a rating that they are surprised at, it's too late. They should know in advance. So just picking up the point you made earlier on.
Yeah. Most likely there is a metric that is already showing that there is something that we will need to talk about, right? Because again,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
metrics are playing a big part of it. But again, you have the accountability in the scorecard. This is something that needs to be, and here is a way in which we understand whether that works well or not.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I look out for in coaching reviews is, where there's a wide range. If someone is super green but they've also got some red, maybe they're focusing too much on a specific area that they should maybe come down on, come down on, because everyone has the same number of hours in the day. And if they're focusing too much time, too much attention, too many resources on a particular area, and that is causing a deficiency or a lack of resource in another area, then the super green is great, but not at the expense of a red. So sometimes it's about, yeah, maybe you just need to reallocate your resources here. Maybe you just need to move things around a little bit.
Just had that conversation. It's actually quite interesting. What happens very often in engineering organizations or sometimes in sales organizations, surprise, they have something in common, and that is the same mistake. You take your best salespeople and you take your best sales engineers and you give them a managerial role because it's kind of the next step up, right? And then what usually happens is that you still want them to be the great engineers or the great salespeople, But you have to realize that they are two different scorecards, two different things, right? So when I see this big spread, see something is super green and something is red, my first question is the scorecard right? Does the red stuff belong here? Right? Or should it be somewhere else? Is it here for historical reasons because nobody else was available to take that accountability? It needs to travel somewhere. It might be that, hey, we know it's not great. We're doing what we can here. We're gonna fix it with this new hire next quarter, right? But we have a plan. That's the important piece.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. That's good. Mm. So, so it's not. So scorecard conversations are not just around where there are differences. Obvious, if both the reviewer and the reviewee rate it as red, then you need to talk about that. It's not about where there's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
differences. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I just that
mm,
when there is a difference, it's usually much more interesting conversation.
yes, that's right. Yeah, because it's a mismatch in expectations. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
hmm
like where does this come
yeah,
from? Like it's great.
yeah,
And from that tension comes solutions and comes improvements and comes innovation, and I love that process. I loved
yeah,
it as a leader, right? And I think that, going back to your previous point, our leaders that we are teaching this process, they underestimate one thing, and that is how freaking simple it is, how easy it is, right? Because they have the baggage of, oh, reviews so hard. Right? It's easy, it's collaborative, it helps with cohesion, right? It helps with the understanding of it. It allows for the conversation of what a person wants. Where do they want to
yeah,
go? Where do they want to be when they grow up? And is this card helping them to get there? And again, back to an individual development plan. How does it fit on their journey, right? I just I cannot overstate how important and valuable this is.
yeah. And we shouldn't. We can't understate how easy it is, unlike the normal performance review process. And we may have mentioned in this edition that these are not performance reviews. Now,
Yeah.
they should be really simple, and they are really simple. They take a little bit of preparation, but if you're spending more than 30 minutes preparing for a coaching review, you're probably doing something wrong. The scorecard is probably not right for you, or you're not right for the scorecard. So, minimal preparation, and the review itself should be done in 20, 30 minutes, unless there is a particular topic that's going to need a real deep dive. And again, that probably comes back to the scorecard or the individual. Maybe you haven't got the right person in that functional role.
Um, I was just thinking about how many cards, we have, over 50 of them, right? There are actually quite a few cards that are dealing with the topic of feedback in some way,
Yeah,
right? Uh, whether it's talking about clarity, whether it's talking about framework of how to deal with hard truth, right? There is a lot of that because, hey, as a leaders, this is our primary thing is to provide feedback to people, provide help, provide assistance, right? Through that. But this tool is just so powerful. If you can make it part of your organizational habit across the whole organization, it's such a huge lift for us, for the whole team. And again, you remove the element of surprise. You detect early that there might be a misalignment of expectation between the team member and the organization. You can deal with it in a proactive fashion. You don't have to do, anything drastic, and then everybody knows what's coming. And it's again, those were usually the best times. Is when we could, shake hands after the, after the review, and say, "Hey, we have a plan. That's great." Regardless of
yeah,
what colors we showed up in the morning, into the conversation, we end up with a plan, and we know that we are aligned going forward.
because things are not always super green. And sometimes, you need to readjust and reshape, or sometimes something's just hard. There's a big thing that needs to get tackled, and it's going to take a while, and it won't be green or super green for a bit. But that's just organizational development. That's just business.
I would almost say that if everything is super green, you're not trying very hard.
Yeah, yeah. Or
You're
your
not challenge,
expectations are too low. Yeah,
you're not
yeah,
challenging yourself very
yeah,
well. Yeah,
mhm,
exactly.
yeah. Okay, wrapping this cardcast up. Coaching reviews, absolutely critical, not performance reviews. They're really easy, they take minimal preparation time, and they shouldn't take long to run. If you're not running coaching reviews, you're missing out on one of the key aspects of the metronomics system.